So today we're going to look at the expansion of civilization in East Asia. And we already spent a lot of time looking at China in the post-classical era. And so what we're looking at here is Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. And they're going to share some similarities to each other, both in physical geography as well as the influence that China had on these three regions. So we're going to start by looking at the physical geography of these three. First off, all three of these regions are very mountainous. And that's going to play a big role in their development. And in between these mountainous regions are fertile valleys. And so similar to Greece, it's in these fertile valleys between these mountainous regions where civilization developed. And we're going to see the same thing in Korea and Vietnam and Japan. They too were very mountainous. Also, Japan is made up of a series of volcanic islands, so that's going to play a role in their development as well. As far as their demographics go, most of the population was located in these fertile plains between these mountainous regions. Rice was the key crop in all three of these civilizations. And all three of these civilizations also had large cities, not nearly as urban as China was, but large cities did exist. And it's in these cities where most of your Chinese influences could be found. So the first of these three regions we're going to look at is Korea. And Korea, throughout their history, was always influenced by the developments in China. When China had large empires, they tended to get invaded by China. A good example of this is the Chosun Kingdom, which was conquered by the Han Dynasty. And the Han Dynasty then basically stayed in Korea for the next 4 centuries or so. And so they were frequently at odds with China. They also were frequently invaded by nomadic groups. And so this is kind of a constant theme in their history. And when the Tang Dynasty comes to power, they're going to end up conquering much of Korea. When the Tang Dynasty comes to Korea, they were basically in a kind of 3-way civil war. You had 3 major kingdoms that were at constant odds with each other. And the Tang Dynasty uses this to their advantage. They side with the Silla Dynasty in Korea, and together they defeat the other 2 rival kingdoms. And so following this, the Silla Kingdom basically will rule Korea and set up a tribute relationship with China. And under this tribute system, Korea paid regular annual payments to China. But in the long run, this really benefited Korea. Not only did it give them peace with China, but it also gave them access to trade with China and access to Chinese culture and manufactured goods as well. So when we look at the influence that China had in Korea, first off, Sinification is simply the adoption of Chinese culture. And we're going to see that in Korea. We're also going to see it in Vietnam and Japan as well. And throughout their history, Korea always borrowed what was useful from China. So for example, you had Confucian ideas that were prevalent in Korea. In fact, they created a Confucian examination system similar to China's. Now, there was one key difference when it came to this examination system, and that was the meritocracy that we saw in China was not enjoyed in Korea. In Korea, it was mostly your upper aristocratic families that dominated the exam system. And so in China, remember, at least under theory, it was open to everybody. So even if you were a lower class person, you could take the exams and pass them and perhaps receive a position in government. In Korea, the exams were completely dominated by the upper classes. We're also going to see some newer ideas make their way into Korea. For example, Neo-Confucianism becomes fairly widespread amongst the elites in Korea. We also see Chan Buddhism, or Zen Buddhism as it's known in Japan, but Chan Buddhism, that was the version of Buddhism that kind of focused on meditation in order to achieve these brief flashes of enlightenment. It becomes popular amongst the lower classes in Korea as well.